to Aaron Village Church Online. I'm John. I'm going to be your host this morning. Let me start by giving a huge shout out to all of you joining us from any of our network churches in Acton or Orangeville. We love that you're here this morning. If you're new to Church Online and you're watching this at aaronvillage.online.church, why don't you take a minute right now, log into the chat bar, sign up with your email if you want to be part of our mailing list. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, drop us a comment below in the comment bar and make sure you like and subscribe. This morning is very special to me because we're going to talk this week again about Jesus and justice. In a couple minutes, we're going to be hearing from a few different pastors in our family of churches, each sharing what God has been speaking to them as they reflect on the issues of justice and race this week from a particular Canadian context. This is close to my heart because for the past 10 years, Aaron Village has sent a team into God's River First Nations community up in northern Manitoba. This year would have been our 10th year. It would be my 6th year. We're still hoping to get in. The trip has been delayed. We're looking at a potential trip date of August 14th to 24th. So stay tuned for updates on that timeline as things move around in this ever-changing world. We have a fundraiser that we're running right now for Father's Day, which is coming up soon. If you could send an e-transfer to jonathanrclifford@gmail.com, your name will be entered into a draw and a raffle to win a Father's Day prize. See the scoop for more details. Next Thursday, June 17th, we'll be releasing the name of the winner in the scoop. So today is going to be another incredible Sunday in this important conversation, and we're glad you're here for it. But before that begins, just take a quick reminder it's important in days like these to stay connected and help others do the same. So if you can think of anyone that you can send a text to or a message to have them join this morning for this morning service, go ahead and do that right now. And also think about people you can connect with during the week, just to call, just to send a text to check in. Caring for each other is what we do. Thanks for being part of our network of care. Parents, next week is Father's Day, and Jillian will be doing some more doorstep deliveries this week for your kids. Don't forget to log in at aaronvillage.ca/kidzone for this week's Kids Church episode and activities.
Peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, all for you. My lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore.
We saw on Instagram, this is a fan favorite, so why don't you go ahead and sing along with us. cross, but he brought me his love for his love for who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed his grace runs. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son? Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm her child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm her child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. One more time. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm her child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm her child of God, yes I am.
Good morning, Alliance family. My name is Steven Odeje, and for the past 2 decades, I've been involved in full-time ministry. I was involved at Rexdale Alliance Church, where I served in youth ministry, and afterwards I was loaned to the People's Church here in Toronto. And I'm saying loaned because you know full well that once you're with the Alliance, you will always remain with the Alliance. So I was loaned to the People's Church, where I served in various capacity. And as of late, I've sensed God calling me to serve Him as a police officer with Toronto Police. And when I've sensed God calling me to serve Him in such a way, I had no clue that God would be calling me for such a time as this. I was born and raised in Montreal, and I've had the privilege of playing hockey my whole childhood. And I'm saying privilege because, as you can imagine, there aren't too many people of my skin complexion that has that privilege of playing hockey. And playing hockey, I loved it. But one of the things that you could probably imagine is I was always the only black kid in my team. And that led to its fair share of hardship, being called all sorts of names. And I remember after this one particular game when I had been called names over and over by teammates, by people from the opposing team who were supposed to be shaking hands and saying, you know, good game, good game, good game. One person called me the N-word. And I remember that was it for me. I vowed to myself that I would never trust a white person again. That was it. Because I had been so hurt and so wounded. I was traumatized by the reality that was happening over and over. And as we look at the events that are happening around the world right now, it's that same sense of trauma that many of people of my skin complexion are dealing with. Our social contract had been broken when we vowed that we would trust an entity that was supposed to protect us. That being said, we are betrayed by them. There's a sense of betrayal trauma, and this triggers a community trauma because we're all involved in this, and this trauma changed the way that I see myself, the way I see God, the way that I see the world. And every time that something like that happens around the world, it triggers the pain and the hurt, especially if that pain has not been healed, has not been treated. And it takes away our sense of safety. It breaks our heart when we think about the reality that a young man was gunned down while he was going for a jog. And I have to deal with this reality as, on the one hand, as a black man, I have to deal with this reality. On the other hand, as a police officer, I have to deal with this reality. As a colleague of mine was saying how he was working for one of those peaceful protests, and he's a black friend, and he was told, how does it feel to be a slave to the white man again? So we endure our fair share of this is one of the angles that I have to deal with it as well. But above all, how do I wrap my mind around what's happening as a follower of Christ? Because before I'm a police officer and before I'm a black man, I am a follower of Christ. And you may be asking the same question: how can you come along the black community during this international situation that's happening right now? And I just want to give you a few tips from experience of what I can see that could help. One is to acknowledge the reality of what many of our brothers and sisters are going through. I've had many white friends, especially as of late, I've had many white friends say, "Stevens, you know what? It just dawned on me." One guy called me last week, a pastor called me last week, "Stevens, it dawned on me, I never realized that you're black. You know what? When I look at you, Stevens, I treat you like everybody else. I don't see color." And when people say that, I really believe that they mean well. They mean well that they treat me like everybody else and that, they don't see my color. But the reality is that when you don't see my color, you don't acknowledge my reality. You don't acknowledge the reality that I'm going through this. It's a huge part of who I am. And I don't have that privilege of not seeing color. You see, the reality is I have to tell my kids what is it like to grow as a black person. That you have to work, and I was told that as a kid, and I'm telling my kids that as a black person, you have to work twice as hard to get the same opportunities that maybe a white person get. And I feel for my daughter because I have to tell you, you have to work twice as hard as a black man and twice as hard as a white woman and twice as hard as a white man to get the same opportunities. You don't acknowledge my reality that when you walk to a department store, you get followed. You don't acknowledge my reality that, when you go to the ATM machine and that sweet old lady's in front of you and she's all of a sudden clenches her purse as she looks back because she sees a man of color. So one is to acknowledge the reality that we are people of color and that our reality it's real. It's something that we cannot bypass. And the other aspect is having the courage to listen, having this posture of cultural humility where you come and you want to listen. And some people, some black brothers or sisters may be ready to share, some may not. When people go through trauma, some are willing to share, some are not willing to share. And listen, not with an idea of wanting to interject and want to fact check. If somebody that's been sexually abused, you don't, and they have the courage of telling your story. You don't go to them and say, "Hey, well, why didn't you get out of there? Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you? How come? Are you serious? Are you sure?" You don't. No. You have your heart breaks for them, and you come to them with a posture of wanting to listen. And this is what Job's friend, when he was going through suffering. Right? They came and for the first week they did the best thing. They listened. As soon as they opened their mouth, it went downhill from there. So let's have this posture of listening. See, when you're traumatized, research shows that what determines the lasting effects of the trauma is whether or not it is processed in the context of community. Whether or not this trauma that people are experiencing is processed in the context of humility. And as a researcher, Torlo says that trauma is when severe emotional pain cannot find a relational home in which it can be held. when severe emotional pain cannot find a relational home in which it can be held. And this is where, friends, as a church, we are this relational home where we can share, where our pain can be validated, where our pain can be cried, when you can journey with people, when you can cry with people, when you can pray with people. And I'm not talking about a prayer, God bless them, heal them, amen. I'm talking about a prayer that, God, you understand what it's like to be hurt. You understand what it's like to be rejected. You are a man of sorrow. Jesus journey with our brothers and sisters because we are part of the same body. Right? We're part of the same body. If my toe is hurting, most of us have stubbed their toe at some point. Your hand doesn't say, you know what, boyfriend, it's all good. Your toe, you take care. No. Your hand gets involved and it tends to the hurt and the pain that your toe is feeling. Similarly, let us, as brothers and sisters, be this relational community where our trauma can be processed and can be prayed with. Paul says to the church in Philippi in chapter 2, it says, do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. Count others, count your brothers and sisters more significant. Yes, you may not have gone through that, but count them as more significant than yourself. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but to the interest of others. And I have hope that the church can be this beautiful, nurturing, caring community where we can start to have those dialogues. Not because I believe that you, my brothers and sisters, are good. And you can no, because Paul continues by saying in verse 5, have this mind among yourself, which is yours in Christ Jesus. It is possible because Jesus Christ lived in our midst. And he set that example that we ought to follow. See, he did not grasp his equality he did not look at his equality with God as something to be grasped, but no, he humbled himself. So brothers and sisters, let's humble ourselves. Let's acknowledge the pain that our brothers and sisters are going through. And let's journey together. Let's engage in conversation so that we can be a true healing community. May God bless you, church, as we navigate those waters.
When I was asked to offer my thoughts and give some teaching on racism and reconciliation in Canada with Indigenous people, I was really excited about the opportunity, and I thank you for that. I'll start with this. It is very hard to be a Christian and not be experienced by other people as being racist. Very hard to be a Christian and not be racist, let alone be experienced by other people as being racist. And here's why. It's because of the exclusive nature of what Christians believe. We believe that there's something unique about Jesus, that Jesus is supreme. We use words to describe Jesus like the only way, the one who shows us God. And when you have that kind of an exclusive claim, and then part of your faith isn't just that exclusive claim, but it's now share that with people, there's a whole bunch of seeds in your faith that if you're not careful, they can grow into some pretty racist behavior. Because we're supposed to go, according to Jesus, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in his name. So when our culture, our Christian belief intersects with any other culture, we come on a really scary trajectory of the sense of superiority and insider knowledge and something that we know that you don't know that we're going to share with you. And Canada bears the scars of how we've done that. Whatever Jesus meant when he stood in front of his disciples and he said, go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, what he didn't mean, he couldn't have meant, is go and find a 5-year-old Indigenous kid, forcibly take him from his home, cut his hair, put him in a place far from his family, forbid him to speak his language, forbid him to pray in the way that he wants to pray, and if he doesn't like it and runs away, beat him up or worse. There's no way Jesus meant that. We know that. We don't even think about cultural genocide as a way to share our faith. So that's one way it's been done, but that's just not on our radar. The second way for Christians to engage with other cultures is different. And this is like Paul, you're familiar with the text of Paul on Mars Hill. He walks into the town and he sees that there's an altar to an unknown God. And he listens to the people. And he understands that what they're yearning for is what he knows in Jesus. So he begins to share with them how Jesus is the continuation of their story. And so maybe in our engagement with Indigenous people, there's a path there that's maybe a little more profitable and a little less blunt. Maybe there we can do things like listen and understand about the Sundance, where young men are pierced and bleed on behalf of their tribe, purging the evil from the community. And we might go, oh, there's an inn for us to share Jesus, and it'll be soft and it'll be kind. Or we can learn about spirit plates and think to ourselves, well, that's a little bit like communion. Maybe there's a place where we can show that Jesus is like the capstone of their story. There's a storyline that's been unfolding in North America since the beginning of time, and it points towards Jesus. And if we listen, we can take our friends to him. That sounds good to us, but friends, that's experienced by Indigenous people as racism. So think of it this way. Maybe you know a young man who has been physically abused by his dad. And you understand as a counselor, as a therapist, as a friend of the family, that what this young man needs when he's about 14 or 15 that would be really therapeutic, really good for him, is if he was able to test his strength against an adult father figure. If in the safety of a relationship, he was able to push back, he was able to flex, he was able to smell a little bit of sweat on sweat, and there would be something in that moment where he was strong that was therapeutic and healed him. But if you, as a man, think, this is what he needs, I'm just going to start wrestling with him, that's not going to be therapeutic or helpful in any way. You've done nothing that gives that young man dignity because you have not understood or appreciated the trauma that he's gone through. You're just imposing what you think is good for him. So to Christians, that second option sounds more fruitful. I don't think that it is. So I want to suggest to you a third way. I started to pray, started to think about what it was that I might be able to offer, and pretty quickly in my thinking, I was led in a really specific direction, which I'm going to go with you here in a minute, but I want to tell you a little bit more of the backstory because I went to some people on my team here at Prairie Alliance Church and shared with the pastoral staff the content of what I wanted to share. And they weren't as excited as you want somebody to be when you are getting ready to give a talk, when you share the content ahead of time. So I will give you a quote from one of our staff members when I shared with them what I'm going to share with you. He said, Nathan, I know you, I trust you, I'm all in on the vision of this church, but what you're saying, even though I have this relationship with you, is challenging enough for me. I feel kind of tense right here. I don't know how well it's going to be received by people who don't know you across the country that are watching this resource. And it's this third way that caused my friend here at the church to kind of go, I don't know. The third way comes to us from Genesis 14 in the Bible, obviously. And in this chapter, we have an encounter between Abraham and a shadowy figure, shadowy in the sense that we don't know who he is, Melchizedek, this Canaanite pagan priest. Okay? That's how we would think of him. So think of those two characters. Abraham, the one who's been given the promises of God that are as big as the universe and as big as time. The one who's been chosen. The one who receives the promises. The one who's told to go. The one who obeys. The father of the faith. Significant figure in the Christian tradition, to say the least. And in this encounter, but with Melchizedek, we don't know anything about, just that he's a Canaanite priest, comes and meets Abraham. What do we think is going to happen there when there's the intersection of these two religions, these two faiths? You might think that Abraham, being the one with the truth, the one with the promises, the one who knows Yahweh, is going to set Melchizedek straight. He's going to say to Melchizedek, okay, well, you have a little bit of a sense of what truth might be. Here, let me complete this for you. Maybe Melchizedek will honor Abraham. Maybe he'll bow to him. Maybe he'll give him some tribute or some money. Because we, coming into this encounter, assume that Abraham is greater, Melchizedek is lesser. It does not unfold that way. It unfolds differently, and in that difference is hope for reconciliation in Canada. Here's the difference. When Abraham encounters Melchizedek, it becomes really clear early on that Melchizedek is the greater. Melchizedek comes and blesses Abraham. The greater blesses the lesser. Abraham gives a tithe, a religious monetary offering to Melchizedek. But the most pointed part of their encounter is when Melchizedek prays over Abraham. When he blesses our father Abraham, he uses his name. Melchizedek uses his name for God, not Abraham's name for God. In Genesis, to this point, God has always been referred to as Yahweh. When Melchizedek comes on the scene, God, as Melchizedek's word, is El Elyon, God, Creator, Most High. And Melchizedek blesses Abraham in the name of El Elyon, Creator, God, Most High. And Abraham receives that blessing. He does not say, different God, wrong name. Let's fix how you think about this, Abraham. No, instead, or Melchizedek, let's fix how you think about this, Melchizedek. Instead, the next thing Abraham says when he has a conversation with a different king is he combines Yahweh and El Elyon. And from that moment on, the Christian tradition has talked about Lord God Most High. Some of your favorite psalms are about God Most High. Maybe even this morning when you prayed, you asked Creator God Most High to bless you. That name for God came from a pagan priest teaching Abraham something Abraham did not know about God. The person from outside of the tradition came and showed Abraham what is missing, and we are all richer for it, because when somebody from the outside comes to teach you something you don't know about God, you're posturing yourself for a blessing. That's the challenging thing for me to share with you, and you can maybe understand why I might have been hesitant to do so because of some of the tensions that you're maybe already feeling. Here's where I got the confidence to share it with you. I am blessed to have 3 Dakota men call me Coda. It's Dakota for friend. One of them is actually here in the room with me, making sure I don't say anything stupid or offensive, and so far, so good, although I haven't made eye contact with him. Another is somebody at a community outside of our town here called the Dakota Plains. His name is JC, and I went and sat with him for an afternoon. And we were going to hang out before I knew I was doing this conversation, but I thought I'll take this opportunity to ask him. So over Popeye, sitting in his living room, we chat for a couple hours, and then finally I pop my question and say, what would you say if you were me? Help me. And he answers in, like, for us, what would be a rabbinical way. He sounds like Jesus when he talks to me, because I ask him a question, he doesn't give me an answer. He gives me a story. So he talks around my question for a while, story over here, and then he circles back and he says, here's what I would say. I would say reconciliation will happen when you allow us to tell you what's missing. And I went, because I had tears in my eyes. Because what the Spirit of God in my prayers had shown me to share with you from Melchizedek had been resonating with my friend, my Coda, and when they came together in that moment, I thought maybe by God's grace, Creator Most High, we're on to something here that might actually be helpful. Maybe if we come to our Indigenous brothers and sisters and we aren't trying to manipulate and steer what they believe so we can show them Jesus, but rather coming and saying, show me what I'm missing about God. Maybe then will we personally be blessed, but may our country maybe know the blessing of unity, healing, and reconciliation as we posture ourselves properly and in ways that are tantalizingly hinted at to be a part of what I want to call a Melchizedek moment. May that be part of your story going forward. May we be used not to introduce people to Christ, but so that we might learn more about Christ and more about God Most High by what they can share with us out of the richness of who they are and what God has revealed of Himself to them. Grace and peace. Thanks for this opportunity.
Okay, everyone, how'd you do? How did you do at listening to the story of someone who you don't know, who's maybe coming from a different culture or a different background or a set of experiences than you? Listen, those were great messages today with some challenging stuff in them, right? Maybe you're feeling it like I'm feeling it, and that's kind of why I'm here right now. Certainly not to qualify anything that you heard this morning. I thought both of these guys did a fantastic job on their own of preparing and presenting God's word to us today. But maybe just to encourage you, to help you wrestle through what you're wrestling with, because it can be hard. I've had a lifetime to wire my thinking, to train my habits to follow certain paths and certain biases, and it can be hard when someone like Nathan throws something in front of you and forces you to walk slower and thoughtfully and to watch your steps so that you make sure that you're not drifting into a direction that you don't want to go or stumbling over something. Does that make sense? Nathan and Steve's words should slow you down. It should challenge you to listen carefully. And I just wanted to thank you for joining us this morning and last week on this journey of justice with Jesus. I really want to encourage you. It is absolutely possible to hold firmly to the word of truth in a way that shines like a star instead of in a way that hurts or harms like a stick. I think that's the way of Jesus. And he is Creator God, Lord Most High. Thanks for being with us. I can't wait to see what God's going to continue to do in your life and in your journey as you wrestle with how to hold firmly to the word of life, but also shine like a star.
Awesome. Great messages. Listen, these are complex issues that we as a church need to continue to pray about and think about and just get together and talk about. We need to continue to serve our First Nations any chance we can get, especially during these times. If you feel like you want to be a part of the God's River fundraiser, again, just send an e-transfer to jonathan.r.clifford@gmail.com and your name will go into a raffle. If you just want to make a general donation, that can be done through Aaron Village giving as well. If there's anything going on in your life right now and you would like someone to pray with you, we got people waiting. Go ahead, click the prayer button at the bottom of your screen. If there's any way we can serve you this week, go ahead and email us at aaronhelps@aaronvillage.ca. It'd be our privilege. We've got one more song this morning. We pray that it continues to inspire you to walk in love and the grace of God this week. God bless you and see you next week.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. And you are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. Yeah, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see that you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 That is who